This video is how to change the front differential or transfer case in a Subaru automatic transmission. This one in particular is the 4 EAT. It should be similar in many, but there are a couple different styles. Some have a fill port down below and some have a dipstick, and so that will be the main difference on how it's done. As you can tell, this one has the dipstick, and you can verify by pulling it out, and you can see that that is gear oil rather than ATF or transmission fluid. And this one actually looks pretty good. However, it's leaking down below, so we're going to be changing the crush washer and then also replacing the oil. Down underneath the car, the front differential or transfer case is not too far behind the oil pan, and the tool you're going to need is a Torx T70 bit. And so if you do have the style that has a fill port from underneath, you want to break that first, as if that gets stuck and you happen to undo the main drain plug first, then you're not going to be able to refill it, and you're going to have some problems there. So I'll get my oil pan to catch any fluid. Also ensure to jack up your car safely so that while you're torquing on this, it doesn't come loose and fall. So this actually has quite a bit of junk inside here, and it's not allowing the socket to seat properly. So I have to use a tool to dig that out. Looks like I got it with my finger there. This one was actually rather loose. Sometimes they're quite torqued down quite a bit. I don't know how far this is going to spray, so I'm getting the oil pan up and close. So the color's not too bad. This has probably been done within the last 10 or so thousand miles. One thing you want to check once you have the plug out is this is magnetic, and it will catch any metallic bits. This one looks actually fine. There's a little bit on there, but nothing much. What you want to watch out for is when there's big chunks of metal on here. And that's when you can see maybe teeth being, or gears being broken inside. This one's fine. You want to clean it off really well before you install it again, just so you can have an accurate view of what may have happened on your next front differential change. So we'll let that drain for a minute longer. Once it's drained, you'll want to clean off the mating surface for where the crush washer goes. Making sure not to let any get inside the hole. And I'll actually use some brake cleaner as well. And then with your drain plug cleaned off, making sure all the threads and then also the mating surface are clean, get your new crush washer. And then just a side note, for the torque spec for this particular bolt, it's 50, I believe it's around 51 or 52 foot-pounds for a copper washer such as this. And for the OEM style of aluminum crush washer, it's closer to 35 or so foot-pounds. I'm using a breaker bar, so it's a little slower than, say, a ratchet. And once you have that back in, you can clean up your differential just so you can see if you have any leaks in the future. That's probably as good as I'll get it there. So once you're done here, you can now lower your car and proceed with filling. And now it's time to fill the transmission. So we established earlier that this one is filled from this dipstick port right here. And the fluid I have chosen is Valvoline Full Synthetic 75W90. Check your service manual to make sure that you're choosing the proper gear oil. One thing in particular you want to watch out for is to make sure it's GL5, API GL5, and I believe all Subarus, as far as I'm aware, require that certification. A lot of the stuff you find in auto parts store is GL4, and that is not, that's not the proper fluid. So this is what I've chosen, and sometimes this bag style can help filling in tight spaces. Just due to that one being pretty far down there, I'm going to use funnels instead. So pull your dipstick out, and you want to get a funnel that can fit in that little hole right there. All right. And this particular differential takes, or transfer case if you want to call it, takes 1.2 quarts. So I've purchased 2 quarts and should be able to do the rear differential as well. So some extra safety, I'm going to add a second funnel on top just to reduce my risk of spilling. Especially if your other funnel below has a smaller hole, make sure to go slow and double check that it's not actually spilling out the bottom from being overflowed by the first funnel. This can be a tedious process, especially since you'll have to remove this whole setup for checking, which you'll probably have to do multiple times just to ensure you have the proper fill level. So now that I'm on the second bag, I'm going to only add a little bit and then check the level. The downside to these bags is you can't see the level that they have in them, but they do make it easier for specifically under the car. So you have a fill port from down there and it's harder to access. So what I'll do now is remove the funnels, keeping a towel under them to prevent spilling. And once you're to this point, you want to take your dipstick and wipe it off just to ensure you're getting a proper reading. And sometimes you actually need to let it sit for a while because the dipstick tube will be full of oil and it will pick up oil as you stick the dipstick in, giving you sort of a false reading. So especially with heavy gear oil, that can sometimes be necessary, but we'll give it a try and see what it shows. Okay, that's fully seated. Pull it back out. And that looks like it's showing a little tough to tell, but that's right in between the low and the full mark. So we'll add a bit more and check again. Not too much more. It's better to underfill and have to do this step a few times than it is to overfill and potentially have to drain all of it from below again and then buy 2 more. So we'll let that sit for just a minute as the viscous gear oil drains down the tube. Make sure to wipe your dipstick again, just so it doesn't have the previous reading, and reinsert it. Sometimes the wiring harness is in the way, so you have to push it just a little bit. There we go. Put that out again. So it's a little tough to tell. Hopefully you can see that. There's actually oil. So the reading looks like it's a little more now, maybe 3/4 of the way between low and full, but you can also see there's quite a bit of oil up past the full mark, and that's the oil, the residual in the tube that hasn't yet settled to the bottom. So that's why sometimes you need to wait to ensure all the oil is out of the fill tube before checking. We'll repeat this process once more then, or as many more times as it takes. making a little bit of a mess. Spilled some on the exhaust, which will for sure smoke once the car starts the next time. Alright, that's my guess right there. Take the dipstick, don't forget to wipe it down again. Didn't want to check the dipstick. Now we're to the point where you definitely have to wait for a minute because it's tough to see, but the actual fill level has now met up with the residual. So right now it looks like it's greatly overfilled, which it's likely not. It's likely near perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some time, maybe 10 or 15 or how many ever minutes it'll take for the rest of the oil within the tube to settle, and then I'll come back and check it again. Okay, back a few minutes later, check again, wipe the dipstick. A little hard to see, but that is right on. Exactly where we want it to be. It pays to take your time, as you don't want to have to drain an accidental overfill and redo it again. Then once you're done, you can lower your car and you're good to go.